Hi there, everyone, and welcome to the Daily Gardener, and thank you for listening. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling. It's March 8th, and there are just 12 days until the first day of spring. Today we celebrate a French botanist and explorer who became an accomplished botanist after losing his wife. And we also learn about the man remembered in the late spring summer flowering genus named Roscoe, which includes extremely fragrant herbaceous perennials in the Zingiberaceae family, or the ginger family. We'll hear an excerpt from a delightful book about pruning wisteria. And if you have a wisteria that's growing in full sun that has not bloomed, you can thank your pruning regimen for that. And we'll hear all about the solution in this excerpt. We'll grow that garden library today with a book about floral cocktails. Cheers to that. And then we'll wrap things up with a little story about a female botanist and botanical illustrator known to her family and friends by her nickname, Shadow. Love that nickname. But first, let's head on over to today's curated news. Today's curated news comes from Fine Gardening. This is an article that was written by Carol Collins, and the title caught my attention because it's something on everyone's minds right now, and that is building an affordable grow light system. Now, what's especially nice about Carol's article is that she includes a little video to walk you through her setup, which includes a couple of high-quality light fixtures, hangers that allow the height of the fixture to be adjusted, waterproof trays to catch the drips, a place to plug the lights in, and then a timer to turn the lights on and off. And here's another great tip that I was talking to a fellow gardener about last week. If you're going to buy grow lights, make sure you don't go with the least expensive option, and make sure that you're getting the lights that offer the full spectrum of color that plants need that we can't see with the human eye. You need good quality grow lights, especially if you're starting seeds. All the time I hear from people who want to know why their seedlings end up with these really long stems and they're super spindly. And that has a lot to do with the spectrum of light that they're using when they start with their seedlings. So if you're buying LEDs, and there's a lot of them out there, make sure you do your research. Read in the description and make sure that you're getting the right spectrums of light for vegetables or for whatever seed you're growing. And remember, just because you can see well with the light doesn't mean that the plants are doing well with that light, because again, they use spectrums of light that we can't see with the naked human eye. So that's a really important thing. Anyway, I could go on and on about starting seeds. We could spend a whole show just talking about airflow or your seed starting media, or even just the light that you're using for your seed. But if you're looking for an affordable way to do your own setup, your own lighted setup for starting seeds in your home, make sure to check out this article by Carol Collins in the Facebook group for the show. So if you're there and you'd like to check this out, just search for the word light and Carol's post will pop right up. And if you're not in the Facebook group, no big deal. You can join it very easily anytime you want to. Here's how you do it. The next time you're on Facebook, just search for the Daily Gardener Community, where you'd search for a friend and then request to join. I'd love to meet you in the group. It's time for today's Botanical History. All right, here's Botanical History for March 8th. Today is the birthday of the French botanist and explorer André Michaux, who was born on this day, March 8th in 1746. Most people think of André Michaux as the old, accomplished botanist, but I always prefer to recall the beginning of his story because, to me, that's what set him on his course. André grew up on a royal farm in Sattery, south of Versailles. His father trained both he and his brother in horticulture, and after his father died, André carried on at the farm. André married a rich farmer's daughter from a nearby farm named Cecile Clay. Within a month after marrying, Cecile became pregnant. And a month shy of their first wedding anniversary, Cecile delivered a son, Francois André. And later in life, André named an oak in his son's honor. Tragically, Cecile died after the delivery of their only son, which plunged André into depression. Yet mercifully, the decade after Cecile's death ended up accelerating André's horticultural learning and development. First, his friend, the naturalist, Louis-Guillaume Lemonnier, persuaded André to work with exotic plants that needed study and acclimation to the weather in France. Then, André started studying with the great botanist Bernard Duduceau at Versailles and in the Royal Botanic Garden in Paris. And finally, André began starting to travel to collect plants. In 1786, André was asked to go to North America, and he brought his 15-year-old son, Francois André, along with him. André's mission was to establish a botanical garden in America and send specimens back to France. In quick fashion, André established his nursery on property that's now occupied by the Charleston Area National Airport. Today, as you leave the Charleston Airport, you'll notice a stunning mural that honors André and his son. The mural was installed in 2016, and in one panel, André Francois and his father are depicted in the potager, or kitchen garden. The main scene depicts the rice fields along the Ashley River and the Charleston Harbor, where André introduced one of the first camellia plants. Native to Asia, camellias are small evergreen flowering trees or shrubs, and camellias are in the tea family, which is why camellias are commonly called the tea plant. In floriography, or the language of flowers, the camellia represents love and loyalty. Camellia blossoms are beautiful, and they come in a variety of colors, sizes, bloom times, and forms. And best of all, camellias are long-lived, and they can grow for 100 to 200 years. Finally, here are two fun facts about the camellia. In California, Sacramento is nicknamed the Camellia City, and the camellia is Alabama's state flower. And today is the birthday of the Liverpool poet, historian, botanist, and politician William Roscoe, who was born on this day, March 8th in 1753. William grew up in the Presbyterian Church. He learned his love of poetry from his mother, and he'd helped his father with his work as a market gardener. As an adult, William was an early abolitionist during a time when the slave trade was the backbone of the economic success of Liverpool. In 1803, William led a group of botanists and naturalists and helped found the Liverpool Botanic Garden, one of England's earliest public gardens. And William gave the inaugural address for the Botanic Gardens and served as its first president. For the rest of his life, William loved working in the garden, and he especially enjoyed studying the tropical plants. In fact, William also authored a book on the ginger plant family, which includes canna lilies, arrowroot, ginger, and turmeric, something we hear an awful lot about in TV commercials today. As for William's book, his daughter-in-law, Margaret Roscoe, provided some of the illustrations for his work. And in 1807, William wrote a whimsical poem about a party for insects for his 10 children to get them excited about the natural world. His poem is called The Butterfly's Ball and the Grasshopper's Feast, and it has the famous verse, "Come take up your hats, and away let us haste to the butterfly's ball and the grasshopper's feast." With his great work as an abolitionist, as one of the founders of the Botanic Garden, not to mention his charming poetry, it's no wonder that a biography of William Roscoe referred to him as Liverpool's greatest citizen. Today in horticulture, William Roscoe is remembered in the late spring summer flowering genus Roscoea, which includes extremely fragrant herbaceous perennials in the Zingiberaceae family, or the ginger family. Roscoea, or alpine gingers, are native to China and the Himalayas. Roscoea blossoms look like the bloom of an orchid, and they are perfect for a woodland or a shady border. Beautiful. It's time for Unearthed Words. Today's words come from the garden writer and gardener Cisco Morris from his book Ooh La La, with the subtitle Homegrown Stories, Tips and Garden Wisdom. And this is a little excerpt that Cisco wrote about wisteria. The biggest reason that wisterias don't bloom is incorrect pruning or total lack of pruning. Allowed to grow wild, a wisteria will put all its energy into growth and forgo flowering for years. So here's what Cisco says to do. After planting, remove all but the 3 strongest vines. Wind those around and tie them to whatever you're going to be growing them on. Make sure you wrap the vines in the direction they naturally want to go. Chinese and Japanese wisterias naturally wind in different directions. To entice the plant into blooming, you need to do some special pruning. Wisteria normally bloom in mid-May, and soon after the blooming period is over, tendrils begin to grow out of the main structural vines. For the first few years, your wisteria won't bloom because it's too young, but the tendrils will still begin to grow right after the normal blooming period is over. And each tendril is capable of growing 25 feet in one season. The trick to encouraging flowering is to cut back these rapidly growing tendrils to about 6 inches long. This is called spur pruning. All the energy that would have gone into 25 feet of growth is captured in the 6-inch spur and now stimulates flower bud production instead. Spur pruning is a lot of work that must be done every spring soon after the tendrils begin to grow. But pruning in this manner usually results in flowering within 4 to 5 years after planting. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, Floral Libations by Cassie Winslow. This book came out in 2019, and the subtitle is 41 Fragrant Drinks and Ingredients for Flower Cocktails, Non-Alcoholic and Alcoholic Mixed Drinks, and Mocktails Recipe Book. Well, Cassie's book is a gardener's delight, and I first ran across it in a gift shop back in 2019. The cover is absolutely gorgeous, and Cassie's creativity shines in this wonderful book. Edible flowers and botanically infused drinks are all the rage. They are beautiful, and Cassie teaches us how to make them taste as good as they look. Cassie's recipes include an iced lavender cafe latte, rose petal almond milk, a dandelion tea cinnamon cappuccino, an orange blossom Moscow mule, and my favorite, plum rosewater gin and tonic, just to name a few. Another wonderful feature of Cassie's book are the beautiful photographs that accompany every single recipe. And if you're in the Facebook group for the show, I shared a gorgeous video of Cassie making her blackberry hibiscus lemon drop. It's so easy and so pretty. This book is 128 pages of beautiful floral drinks, fit for a gardener and perfect for a garden party. You can get a copy of Floral Libations by Cassie Winslow and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for around $4. Great deal. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. Today is the anniversary of the death of the little-known, multi-talented, driven, and dauntless plant explorer, plant collector, gardener, and botanical artist, Charlotte Wheeler Cuff, who died on this day, March 8th, in 1963. Born in Wimbledon in 1867, Charlotte was the youngest daughter in her family. And at some point in her childhood, Charlotte became very ill, and her sickliness caused her family to give her a little nickname that would follow her for the rest of her life, Shadow. At the age of 30, Charlotte married a man she'd known since her childhood, Otway Wheeler Cuff. Otway was a civil engineer who had just secured a posting in Burma, and after the wedding, Otway and Charlotte immediately left for Maimo. Charlotte's life with Otway blossomed in Burma as she discovered a world with natural wonders and a beauty she could have never imagined. A lifelong gardener, one of Charlotte's first letters from Burma tells of meeting a Mr. Carter who was, quote, going to start me with plants for our little compound, which I think I shall be able to make very pretty in time. Well, for over 2 decades, between 1897 and 1921, Charlotte painted brilliant watercolors of the beautiful flora of colonial Burma, especially the bountiful orchids of the region. Charlotte's work was such a delight to many people, and especially to the folks back at Kew and other botanic gardens. So much so that plant explorers like Reginald Farrar, George Forrest, and Frank Kingdon Ward would stop by during their expeditions and visit Charlotte to check out the areas that she had explored. During her time in Burma, Charlotte would saddle up a small pony and go jungling, her word for botanizing in the jungles and the mountains of Burma. Charlotte's adventures, maps, paintings, and notes were all vividly described and preserved in prolific letters home to her mother and other relatives. And today, Charlotte's materials are housed at Glasnevin. Now, Charlotte's love of gardening and horticulture attracted the attention of the locals. While many expats in Burma tried and failed to grow plants from their homeland, Charlotte took a different track. She committed early on to growing the beautiful tropical plants native to Burma. In no time, government officials there asked Charlotte to create a garden that would become her legacy, the Botanical Garden of Burma. Charlotte worked on designing and planting the garden during her final 5 years in Burma. And today, among the plants that are named in Charlotte's honor is a blue anemone called the Shadow's Buttercup. In 2020, the author and former director of the Botanic Gardens at Glasnevin, E. Charles Nelson, wrote a beautiful book about Charlotte called Shadow Among the Splendors. Nelson's book follows Charlotte's experiences in Burma and shares many of her charming personal letters and writings. As for Charlotte, her dear Otway died in 1934. Charlotte carried on without him at their home back in Kilkenny for 33 years until she died on this day, March 8th in 1967, just a few months shy of her 100th birthday. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener, and remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. Hey, thanks for spending part of your day with The Daily Gardener. If you want to read even more botanical brevities, just head on over to thedailygardener.org. That's where you can find all the stories, biographies, and books that I share on the show. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for my free Friday newsletter. It has lots of goodies in it, and I try to make the newsletter like you're getting a marvelous letter from a garden friend. You can always find The Daily Gardener on all your favorite social media. You can follow the show on Twitter, and you have a standing invitation to join the free Facebook group for listeners of the show. Just search for Daily Gardener Community the next time you're on Facebook and request to join. Last but not least, you can easily share your gardener greetings or book submissions by emailing me at jennifer@thedailygardener.org. The Daily Gardener is produced in lovely Maple Grove and Wyoming, Minnesota, with the help of Paige Mance, Brooke Bierbaum, and Eric Begay. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and as always, have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.